We can look to Njinga to show how our actions were far less about the titillating sexual and gender threats Castle Hahn sensationalized, or contemporary Western queer scholars may desire so much to be true in order to legitimize a history of same-sex sexuality in Africa. Rather, Njinga used the gender hierarchy to symbolically achieve maleness, or the power that came with being male in her Ndongo culture. The case of Queen Njinga is much less a story of heroic lesbianism and far more a story of the brilliant and strategic attainment of status.
Dismissing Njinga as a sexually transgressive icon does not negate the history of Black and African queerness. We do not need to cling to Njinga as queer in order to prove African queerness. You see, the Black Atlantic has always been the queer Atlantic, Natasha Tinsley reminds us. To this effect, an attempt at queer in Africa by Western scholars is not reclamation of a pre-colonial identity, nor can it be. To do so only denies the permanence and incessant presence of queerness. But this pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial linear understanding is a timeline orchestrated around the colonizer. Presumed to be either all queer or all not queer, it is limited by its reliance on a monolithic African culture aesthetic. In the evidence of experience, Joan Scott writes, history is a chronology that makes experience visible, but in which categories appear as nonetheless ahistorical. Desire, homosexuality, heterosexuality, femininity, masculinity, sex, and even sexual practices become so many fixed entities being played out over time, but themselves not historicized. This notion of fixed concepts is one that causes Njinga's history to be generalized and used as a battleground for what are at times opposing agendas. Njinga's queer history has been shown in a contemporary context when she is not a contemporary figure. What is missing from Njinga's history, along with other historical African women, is a narrative that is void of false assumptions of what is and what is not African. The historically Western pronunciation of Njinga's queerness makes it difficult to identify Njinga's queerness within or against her own Ndongo culture. Investigating possible readings of Queen Njinga's sexual and gender identity must acknowledge the complicated nature of her reality, rather than simply apply Western understandings of gender and sexuality onto her experience. Audre Lorde wrote it best when she said, "If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive."
It may not be possible to decolonize our Western gaze. We can, however, be accountable to it, and being accountable does not mean an investigation of Njinga is fruitless or inherently oppressive. Rather than contend that Njinga is a queer icon or a pinnacle of African nationalism, we must question why she must be one or the other. Ultimately, proving the existence of same-sex sexuality in pre- or post-colonial Africa does not speak to the tension surrounding the very need for proof. Thank you.
Next we have Brendan McHugh. He's a junior at San Francisco State University, and he'll be presenting a paper entitled "Just a Small Town Boy, Queering the Quarterback, Whitening the Queer, Re-othering the Other." All set?
All right. Thank you for having me. All right. So I wrote this paper about the TV show Glee on Fox Network, and I was going to have a little nice PowerPoint to show some pictures of the characters for everyone if anyone hasn't seen it, as well as a clip, but technical difficulties in the airport proved that wasn't going to happen. So I apologize for that. All right, so I'll begin. After a long string of high school-themed musicals that were hardly edgy but extremely popular, comes yet another musical to add its name to the revitalized teen genre. This show is the energetic and very gay Glee. Several articles and reviews of the singing sensation have remarked on how the formula of the show is nothing unique, while a more recent article in Rolling Stone magazine has labeled it as the gayest show ever. And to top it all off, the cast and crew have received a Hollywood Diversity Award. While all these views of the show are somewhat bright, they seem to be missing the bigger picture of what the show is saying. By providing a queer and feminist intersectional analysis, I will analyze the intricacies of queer identity and how it is used to diversify whiteness in order to maintain its hegemonic hold on the cultural conversation revolving around queer and race identities. Because that is what the show is really showing. It is just a larger reflection of our cultural discourse on the mainstreaming of queerness. I refer to queering as a process more than as an identity in the show. And I use the intersectional analysis to examine the ways in which various socially and culturally constructed categories interact on multiple levels to manifest themselves as inequality in society, but also as reflected in the TV show. Queering the quarterback. In the first episode of the show, the Glee Club is struggling. Faculty member Sandy, an ambiguously gay male music teacher, is fired for an inappropriate interaction with a male student, who is going to rescue the Glee Club. As far as the principal is concerned, it is getting scrapped. After all, Ohio and the country is in a recession. But Spanish teacher Mr. Schuster, a former student, quarterback, and one-time Glee member, rises to the occasion to revitalize and give life to the dying Glee Club. Schuster wants to make the club great again. This first somewhat minor mechanical plotline was the first sign to me as a viewer that something was amiss, as you could say. The Glee Club seems to have an unmarked queerness due to Sandy, the prodigal and perhaps perverted teacher. Its failure seems due to Sandy's inappropriate deviant behavior, as well as the fact he is abrasive to his students and quote-unquote bitchy. These signs of sexual deviance have often been linked to queerness by straight folks, of course. And Schuster is a charmer, and lucky for him, his straight character has developed the most on this queer backdrop by being able to fix what Sandy was ultimately failing at. So Schuster finally gets several students in the club, which he names New Directions. But is this club going in a new direction? The members of the club include a disabled student, one Asian American young woman, a curvaceous African American young woman, an ambiguously gay male student at first, and a theatrically competitive, raised by gay dads white woman. But of course, the white teacher is picking the name of a seemingly multicultural singing group. And did I mention that they're at the bottom of the social food chain? It's repeatedly thrown in the viewer's face. But there is one character that does not fall into the bottom of the social food chain, and that is the quarterback, Finn. Finn is encouraged to join New Directions by Schuster, mainly because the show and the group needs a leading man. According to the character of Schuster, Finn is reminiscent of his own high school career. This mirroring of characters, though Finn is most definitely not as suave as Schuster, seems suitable. Finn joins the group, much to the disdain of his football cadre and his cheer captain girlfriend. Despite these pressures, Finn finds his place in the Glee Club, as well as himself. Finn is the first straight character, besides Mr. Schuster, that goes through a queering of character. The fact that Finn decides to delineate from the narrative of a normative jock by joining the Glee Club, which in terms of status is social death. His best friend Puck and various other members of the football team now see him as being inferior, since he is daring to step outside the bounds of his social status. Not only that, they also accuse him of being gay, or as they put it, he's kissing guys now. His girlfriend, cheerleader extraordinaire and president of the Abstinence Club, thinks it's ridiculous that he even contemplated joining the club, and now because of this, her social status is also in danger. And Mr. Schuster's wife, Terry, also thinks that Schuster's involvement with the club is ridiculous and selfish because it's taking away time from him investing in creating a family. A clear deviation in terms of normalcy. And these are just two examples of how two straight and white male quarterbacks have their character queered by joining Glee Club and by taking active roles in terms of song and dance. But in order to do a full examination of how straight characters in the show are queered, I must shift my focus to Kurt, the gay character on the show. At this time, he's the only openly gay character. Not only to show how gay identity is whitened through this, but also to show the processes of queering the quarterback and whitening the queer are connected. The two processes happen simultaneously in one episode titled Prager's. Straightness is queered by a combination of masculine spectacle, which is the football game that takes place, and queer performance, which is the Beyoncé performance of single ladies that the football team eventually performs. This combination does a whiteout of queer identity because of this shift to the sports and the quarterback focal point in the show. Kurt is brought onto the team by Finn because Kurt lied to his father about being on the team because he's fearful of his father finding out about his gay identity. So he joins the team. Most of the straight men on the team are quite comfortable with their identity and comfortable enough to harass Kurt from afar as opposed to earlier trash cannings. But they do not know that Kurt will be the key to their success.